If I were to ask you who is the most overrated player in the NBA, who would you pick? Would it be a guy like LaMelo Ball, somebody who puts up insane numbers but does it on terrible efficiency? Maybe it's a guy like James Harden, who has spent years at the top of the league but never got over that championship hump. Or maybe it's this guy right here. Because for years, that's exactly what people have been calling Jayson Tatum. They say that he's not that guy in the playoffs, that he's just a product of the Celtics system, that he's nowhere near the level of other superstar players. But what if I told you that was all nonsense? What if I told you the numbers, the history, and the results tell a completely different story? What if I told you you were wrong? Because whether people like it or not, Jayson Tatum has been one of the best players in the NBA for years. And it's absolutely crazy that I even have to come on here and prove it. Now, Jayson Tatum never got the luxury of being an underdog. Some guys go from unknown draft picks to global superstars, they prove people wrong and become legends. But Tatum, he was expected to be great from the moment he stepped into the league. No surprise breakout, no Cinderella story, just instant expectations. And when you're that good that fast, people stop giving you credits. Because the NBA loves an underdog story. We saw it with Giannis, Luka, and Jokic. Those guys had to fight for their respect, but Tatum, he never got that moment. And because of that, his greatness doesn't feel special. Because let's be real, what do you actually think of when you hear his name? When you hear Luka Doncic, you think of one of the most talented players on the planet. When you hear Giannis Antetokounmpo, you think of a two-time MVP and a champion. But when you hear Jayson Tatum, you probably think of a guy who's just good. A star by every means, but not a generational talent, not a guy who can carry a franchise on his own. And that's the problem. It's not that Tatum isn't great, it's that you've been conditioned not to see it. The media has spent years painting him as just another really good player, not a dominant force, not a face of the league, just good. You hear it in how they talk about him. You see it in the player rankings where he's slotted below guys who have never won anything. And you notice it in the way they discuss Boston's success like a team, not a superstar leading the way. They've built this perception around him, and I'm about to tear that entire narrative apart. I want to start this off by saying Jayson Tatum has more playoff wins than Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and Joel Embiid. Just let that sink in. Because if you listen to NBA fans, you'd think those other guys have been dominating the postseason for years. But somehow, the guy who actually wins the most barely gets talked about. And this isn't just a one-time thing. Tatum doesn't just win, he's been doing it at an elite level for nearly a decade. As since entering the NBA, no player has won more games than the guy. Not Durant, not Curry, not even LeBron James. But don't get it twisted, as it's not just regular season success. Tatum has already played in more conference finals than Tim Duncan at his age, and he's already had more deep playoff runs than Dirk Nowitzki had in his entire career. And when the lights shine the brightest, boy does this man deliver. Because Tatum is just one of the handful of NBA players to score 50 points in a playoff game, but the man did it in a Game 7. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he's the youngest player in NBA history to hit 500 career playoff points, and he's one of only 5 players to average 30 points per game in multiple playoff runs before turning 27. This is not the resume of a guy who's just really good, this is the resume of a generational talent. And exactly 9 months ago, he did the one thing that should have ended every debate, but somehow it only made people doubt him even more.
We did it.
For years, people said Jayson Tatum couldn't win it all as the guy. It's the same criticism every great player faces until they finally prove it. Kobe Bryant, before he won in 2009, people said he couldn't win without Shaq. Dirk Nowitzki before 2011 was an all-time great scorer, but not a champion. And after LeBron left Miami, the narrative was simple. He couldn't win without a super team, but after 2016, nobody ever questioned the man again. That's how this is supposed to work. You win a championship and the debate ends. And Tatum did exactly what everyone said he needed to. He led the Boston Celtics to an NBA title, they dominated the playoffs, and he took down elite teams on their way there. By the NBA's own logic, that should have erased every doubt, and yet somehow it didn't change a thing. Because instead of giving Tatum his credit, the media found new excuses. Whether it was Jaylen Brown was better, or the Celtics were stacked, or Tatum wasn't the reason they won, they always found a way to bury his legacy. Which is funny because we never heard that about those other champions. Nobody questioned Kobe's rings when he played with Gasol. Nobody questioned Dirk's championship even though the Mavs had incredible depth. And when LeBron won in 2016, people didn't say, well, Kyrie hit the biggest shot. Winning was supposed to be enough, so why isn't it for Tatum? Because at 27 years old, Tatum has done everything the NBA asks of a superstar. He's won a championship, he's made it to 5 conference finals, and he's put up historic playoff numbers, and yet people still act like he hasn't proven himself. So at this point, I have to ask, if this isn't enough, what else does the man have to do? Now at this point, like I said, I don't know what else to say. The numbers, the playoff success, the championship, Jayson Tatum has done everything a superstar is supposed to do, and yet people still refuse to accept it. No matter how much he wins, there will always be an excuse. No matter how dominant he is, people always will find a way to discredit him. Maybe they'll say Boston was too stacked. Maybe they'll say Jaylen Brown was more important. Maybe they'll say Tatum still isn't that guy. But at some point, it stops being about Tatum and starts being about the people who refuse to see what's right in front of them. The reality is, he's got the numbers, he's got the records, and he's got the championship, and I never even mentioned the regular season success. Now, I'm not saying you have to like the guy, and I'm definitely not saying you have to root for him. But at some point, you're gonna have to acknowledge the truth, and by the time people finally wake up and realize it, my guess, it'll be far too late.